Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, that sounds a little better. Let's get everybody back on the line.
Me?
Hello, Michael.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, this sounds much better.
It does sound much better.
Oh, my God, I couldn't believe that. It was just horrific. But anyways, now I think we're good. Blog Talk reset the show. And so hopefully, hopefully we won't have this problem again. So let me get our co-host here back on the line. Hi, Becky.
Hi, I'm here.
All right. The echo seems to be gone. So we are
wonderful.
Free and clear. Hooray.
Yay. The excitement on radio, huh?
Oh, live radio. You never know what's going to happen. But that has never, ever happened before. That was very, very strange. I'm not sure if it, what in the world went on, but we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. But, Michael, you were talking about some really fascinating things. I believe you were just going into water. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we wanted to hear what you had to say without the echo.
Right. So basically I'm saying you can, in Arthur's theory, he calls these different levels as in Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being equivalent of the realm of light. It's beyond or before space and time, and it would be astrologically equivalent to fire. The next level down is that of charged particles or energy or forces, and this is equivalent to water in the sense of the watery realm of charges and soul and so forth. The third level down was when these particles suddenly deviate, carve out a... Hearing something there? Are you hearing something?
Yeah, it's something playing now automatically. We've got gremlins.
Wow.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here are your supernatural hosts, Patricia Baker and Becky Andreasson. Supernatural Girls.
Definitely getting an experience.
This is amazing.
I'll tell paranormal. We are having paranormal events all over the place, and I'll tell you what, it's so bizarre because when the intro plays, I see it on my radio board, and I can start it and stop it. And that thing had not started or stopped, neither. So, Michael, I guess you're bringing with us a whole host of paranormal excitement. So
yes.
And notice that happens on coast to coast also when they start to approach something that the powers that be don't like. That seems like things come out of the woodwork to kind of suppress the information.
We certainly, both Becky
problem.
and I know this is true, what you're saying. Yes,
yes we do,
exactly.
firsthand.
But also Arthur had felt that it's problems like this that occur that allow us to really get things done to overcome the problem and to persevere. So you persevered, and hopefully if we don't get another ghost voice there, we're good to go now. So let me jump back. So the third level is that of space, in which you have the north, south, east, west directions, and you have a plane. And then the combination of all three, the 1, 2, and 3, gives you space-time on the fourth level, and that's the dimension we live in. It's the three-dimensional thing where you can hit on your desk and your hand doesn't go through the desk, and this is the realm that we're used to dealing with. So we have these four levels. They're all coexisting. We're all a part of all of them all the time. And yet we mostly identify with this 3D world that we're in, fourth dimension of time. But anyway, so once Arthur had decided that there were four levels of existence, then he wanted to know, well, how did we come to be here? So something had to start it off. If we're these miraculous machines, then there had to be a purpose. So he gave purpose as the first stage of his 7 stages of process. And when he outlines this, he uses the Arabic numbers 1 through 7 to indicate the stages, and then the Roman numerals to indicate the 4 levels. So the first one was potential or purpose, and then the second one was charge. So the first one was equivalent to light, the kingdom of light. And he said one thing that's different from light from all the other subatomic particles, so to speak, is that light always gets to the place it's going to in the fastest way possible. Not necessarily the shortest way, but the fastest way. So if you shine it through a glass or through a water realm, it will bend and always go the fastest way to get to its end. So it's almost like light has a purpose even from the start, to go from its origin to its destination in the fastest way possible.
Yes.
Right. So then Arthur had also realized during when he was in Princeton, he actually took the very first course on relativity that Albert Einstein had just come up with, and he was the first student in the class because he had asked for the class to be done, and it was taught to him by a mathematician. But he also realized later on that he could never have come up with this theory of process without the existence of the quantum realm, that quantum physics had to be invented before we would have the tools to be able to realize, to fill in the blanks of where this strange realm is, where the uncertainty occurs. Because for a while, even Albert Einstein didn't want to think that God could play dice with the universe, but Arthur felt like, well, wait, we have to have chance and uncertainty for there to be the freedom to make mistakes and to evolve. And if everything was all, worked out, then there wouldn't be any evolution. It would be just, built in. But it's that freedom of uncertainty that the quantum realm revealed is part of our own process that gave him, again, the feeling that there was this purpose to the universe and that we can understand the universe, and it had to have both freedom or free will and certainty. And that's how the inventor works. He learns the laws of the certainty and then reapplies them with his free will to invent things that never existed. So
if we were to break this down for
sure.
everybody, then what we're talking about is the spirit has a purpose and an organization to it, and then we can throw a curve into it with our free will because we're choosing differently.
Right.
So is that what you're saying?
Well, that's basically it is. So let me kind of work on the actual 7 stages of the process. So the first one is in the spirit realm. In the same way we can look at astrology as fire, water, air, and earth, we can also look at spirit as level 1, soul as level 2, mind as level 3, and body as level 4. And I'll get into some of that a little bit later. But so each of these fourfold ways of looking at things. But so purpose starts it off. In other words, when God said, "Let there be light," basically He's creating a universe for things to happen in. Otherwise, what's the use of being God if there's nothing there to work with? So the process starts off with some purpose. We may not ever know the purpose, but it took purpose to get it all started. Stage is that one of nuclear forces or nuclear particles. But Arthur always argued with the quantum physicists, saying, "Look, these aren't actual particles at that stage. They're forces. They're positives and negatives and neutrals, and they're chasing each other around, but they're not actual identifiable particles until you get to the atomic realm, which was actually on the 3rd stage of identity." So his first thing was purpose, or getting the process started, then going through this charge binding realm of energy, and then in the 3rd stage down, in that both level 3 and stage 3, you had the identity where suddenly all these forces of the atom are brought together, and you have the ones in the center, which are the protons and the neutrons of the nucleus, and you have the electrons, which were in the shell around the nucleus. We know that from subsequent research that the atom is mostly empty space. It's, if you go inside it, you won't really see much. And in fact, as opposed to what we were taught as kids about the atom looking like our solar system, where you could see the electrons rolling around in those shells, we now know that the electrons are actually a fog, a cloud of uncertainty, and an electron can be in 2 places at the same time. I mean, that's how weird quantum physics is. But you can identify every atom. So you can say, well, that's a hydrogen atom because it has this 1 proton to 1 electron, and it can have extra neutrons in there that makes it heavy water and so forth. This one over here is a helium because it now has 2 electrons and 2 protons. And it was the atomic chart, the periodic chart of the elements that we all saw growing up in school, that gave Arthur the hope that if the universe would have this organization that you could see in the atomic chart on the atomic level, then probably if he looked deep enough, he would see the organization of the whole universe would be able to be understood and seen. So the third level down, the power, each of these kingdoms has a name, the kingdom, and then the power of that kingdom. So kingdom of light had the power of potential or purpose, starting it all off. We're all light beings, so to speak. The second one was that of subatomic forces or particles, and it had the power of energy, charge, binding. The third one is the atomic kingdom, in which suddenly the forces are brought into atoms, and you now have the power of identity. We can name each of those atoms, whereas we can't say that's Joe electron over there, and that's Pete electron over there, and that's Joe positron there. You know, they're all indistinguishable. But with the atoms, you can name each one of those formed atoms. The fourth one is the combination of the atoms into molecules. So that was down at equivalent to the Earth level. And it is the molecules that make up our body. In other words, it's all of those atoms in the atomic chart combining and forming in different combinations of, and the power of that stage is combination, that you can now start playing and making the building blocks of the universe. And that part of the theory, from the going up, down from level 1 to 4, is kind of built into the process. In other words, it will happen once things are triggered. So it's very possible with all these galaxies that we see, each galaxy, you know, as we've increased our telescope powers, we keep seeing more and more galaxies where we thought there was nothing out there but empty space. It's very possible that each galaxy we see actually started with this one big flash so-called in that area of the universe, and starting its own process to form another galaxy. But the main thing is, if that was all there was, we'd end up with a universe of just asteroids or non-living matter. It would just be a bunch of planets or asteroid-type things floating around, but no life. Arthur said that in the same way that science just wants that first miracle of the Big Bang or Big Flash, they also, Arthur felt from looking and studying myths that there's this myth of the virgin birth, something coming out of nothing, in the sense of there was no father, but the birth occurred, the virgin birth. And so he called this the turn that occurs at that fourth stage in the fourth level, in which you go from inorganic matter on the left side of the arc, as he called it, I'll explain the arc in a minute, to the right side, which is more organic matter, or molecules that are going to be used to build the cells. So there's a going back upward. So if light descended and became entrapped in matter in the fourth level, or the fourth stage of process, it's at the fourth level, the turn is when light starts to work its way back up to know itself. In other words, to go to enlightenment. So light came down into matter and became part of matter, but then when life comes in, we have the ability to evolve a living universe, which eventually would evolve conscious beings who would have the ability to then reflect back on the miracle that we all have come to share, of being conscious humans who, you know, even though we sometimes seem powerless in the face of all the problems out there, we're the only ones that are going to have the power to change that, as long as we begin to realize our power. So as you went up the stage, the next power, or the next kingdom, was that of plants. In other words, these are the first things that organize the light, like plants use chlorophyll to trap the photons, and then they use the earth ingredients and the air for the nitrogen and the CO2 to make the actual solid plants. And then later those plants gave ground cover and allowed for other plants to grow. The next stage up, and so their power was organization of the plant kingdom. The next stage up was the animal kingdom, which gained another power, and that was animation or mobility, the ability to move. And so an animal can, you know, forage for food by living off the plants or other animals. So they're not stuck like plants are in one spot. And then the apex of the organization of animals was the primates, of which we are like at the top of the chain based on our abilities. In other words, we know that apes are intelligent, and chimpanzees and whales and dolphins, but none of them have created cities or written literature or done great art, as opposed to, there are apes that do art and elephants that do art, but clearly there was something different about humans from the top of the primates. So Arthur gave them a separate kingdom, which he called dominion. And a lot of people have kind of criticized that word because it kind of sounds like the dominion of the slaveholder over the slaves. But he was actually talking about it in a more benign sense of we have the dominion over the earth. We also have the responsibility not to misuse that. The problem is right now is the corporations are using their dominion over, the ability to go in there and just rape the environment and get whatever products they want and then move on and not clean up the mess, and missing the big responsibility of let's not, make species go extinct and pollute our trails, and so people are dying from all kind of toxins because you guys were so messy in your misuse of dominion without responsibility. So,
let's
anyway.
go back to Becky's question if we can, Mike, because,
Sure.
Again, I want to keep boiling this down for everybody in our audience who's listening. Her question was a great one, which is, okay, well, how can we embody this theory or use this theory to help to change this for the better? Because you're right, we're facing these mega corporations with tremendous power that determine what they're going to do behind closed doors. We find out about it later, and we find that our rights have been limited also by the government, who seems to be working closely with these corporate entities. So how can we work with Arthur Young's theory in a way that will make a difference?
Okay. I mentioned the idea of the turn at the bottom, and I said that if it hadn't been for life coming in, that we would have ended up just in a universe of rocks like the asteroids. And this turn is exactly where we are right now. In each of these stages of process that I talked about, there's these 7 stages that descend from 1 to 4 into matter and then back up as we free light in the sense of enlightenment, light knowing itself. But that turn, in each of the subsequent, all the kingdoms, there's also a built-in 7 sub-stage process that's occurring within each of those ones. This gets complex, so I'll just hit right past it. The main thing is every stage has its own turn that has to be done before it can evolve to the top. And the turn is not a guarantee. In other words, right now in humans, we are the equivalent of clams in the animal kingdom at this stage in our human evolution. In other words, if we look at clams compared to primates, there was a lot of way to go between those two. And the clams had to exist, and then other animals were, began to evolve through kind of experimentation and this drive to find niches of the environment to live in. So we now are in the 4th sub-stage of the 7th stage, the Dominion Kingdom of humanity. And we're right at that bottom area where we now have so many combinations. That was the power of that 4th stage. So many combinations of religions and governments and corporations and all these things running out of control with nobody seeing the big picture and knowing where to put the brakes on, that if we don't somehow come together as a society and start saying, look, there have to be rules that we can that can benefit all. I mean, we still have to have corporations, and we need to have food and things for the environment, but things that we clearly can look backward and see are toxic, we no longer have to support that. We are humans. We have incredible ability to overcome these problems, but we have to have an even playing field. And as long as the corporations automatically, suppress research into alternative energies, that like in the 5 movie that Foster Gamble talked about, there have been so many stories of how scientists, when someone comes up on their own with some sort of an over-unity energy device using toroidal energy or better use of solar power that can create electrical power even easier than we can do it now, that something comes up and suppresses that technology, and now we're back to oil and gas and nuclear and being told that, oh, no, we can't find any other way. But we're humans. Look at what we've all created when left to, when nurtured and watered and allowed to do this. So, Arthur's theory gives the big picture. He also shows that at every stage of evolution, as you go up those kingdoms, you reach this turning point in which it's not a guarantee. If you remember the Cosmos TV series from years ago that Carl Sagan did, you remember that TV series?
Yes.
Okay, there was a scene that really affected me deeply, and it was when they had a flyby. Carl was like a spaceship was going through another solar system, and he looks down and he says, "Oh, look, we see lights on that planet down there." So he must have reached an area similar to our own Earth, where they've now got lights and that kind of technology. Maybe we should go down there and visit them and see what their societies are like. And then all of a sudden they go, oh no. And then they saw a nuclear power or something blow up, and then the planet went dead, and they went, oh, another example of a society whose level of technology was not matched by the level of wisdom to control the technology, and so we'll have to keep flying on and see if we can find another planet that got past that point of their evolution. And that's exactly the crisis point that we're at right now. We can get this together if we can come to an understanding, but if we don't, if we continue doing things the way we've been doing, then it does appear to be hopeless, and we may well not make it. So that's almost an argument for why Arthur's theory needs to be out there so people can. One of the ways, again, we haven't even really gotten into the depths of the theory, and we can't possibly do it on this show, but I will refer people to Arthur's website, arthuryoung.com, to look at free videos and essays and so forth, and you can order books and the poster that explains a lot of this. But what I'm saying is, in a way, what I see Arthur's theory is like a universal translator from Star Trek, where when Star Trek would beam down and Captain Kirk would have his little translator, and then suddenly the aliens would speak little, and you would get it come out in English. And so you could then communicate with others. Well, Arthur's theory is so encompassing when you really understand it, that you can see, like, religion covers 1 and 2 parts pretty good, but not so much some of the other parts that do with science. Science does 3 and 4, but doesn't really do anything that has to do with purpose and value. You have to make them scream to even admit that. And so it provides a level playing field for people to work around and discuss. And again, it's not fully finished, so to find their own things that might make it better. But so I think that's the way this theory could help things. In the sense of one of your main interests here is with the title of a radio show called Supernatural Girlz and the paranormal interest. The paranormal realm is in what Arthur would call that second level, and in the 6th sub-stage of humanity, when Arthur predicted that people would be able to manipulate these forces in their own way, such that right now a lot of the paranormal powers are more random. They occur. People have a dream that suddenly comes true, or they'll know when someone's about to call them, but they won't know everyone that's about to call them. And so once we have evolved far enough to do that, these will become common. But you can also see how, like the movie Carrie, maybe there's a certain time where we ought not to have those powers until we can properly control them, because if they go out of whack, we're in problems.
Well, wouldn't that always be? That would always be, though, because we have free will. So you could get Carries out there, and then you could get the others. That would never end, as long as we have free will.
Well, but free will is also tied into responsibility, and that's part of the things that we would need to for example,
again,
it's free will for a teenager to grab a car and go out there and start driving, but not responsible, and that's always a problem. So we're always going to have a problem to deal with, but the idea that we evolve enough to be able to deal with them in responsible ways.
And our purpose and value, that is part of us. I mean, there's people that are greedy out there, and their purpose is to have all the value. And then what about the people that want to help truly the people? See, there again is your free will.
Exactly. But right now, it's not a fair playing field, because without something to say to the corporation, just because, look at that whole deal about corporations are not people, therefore they can give unlimited amounts of money to control our our legislatures and make them vote for whatever the corporations want them to vote for. That's not fair. Corporations,
right. That's turned our government into a bunch of puppets.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what we should do is say, okay, your corporation can give all the money you want to, but it goes into a giant collective where any candidate can then, have money from that, and you can't decide which candidates can have some of your money. The ones that you want will get a chance, but the other ones also. That would be like public financing of elections in a sense, rather than the corporate. The same thing with the lobbyists. As long as the lobbyists can, there's more lobbyists for the healthcare system and other things in Washington, D.C. I can't remember the statistics, but it's like an amazing amount of lobbyists there per congressman, and they're all coming by with little under-the-door gifts, and even though Congress supposedly writes laws that say, oh, well, we can't take more than this amount of money, or we can't go on more than this amount of vacations paid for by them, but there's always ways that they get around that, or the thing where the congressmen after their term become lobbyists and come back and start, working for the corporations to influence their friends. Until we have some way to realize that that is not the government of people that we wanted this nation to be when we first established it, government by the people, for the people, and of the people. Instead, we've got a government of the corporations, by the corporations, and for the benefit of the corporations, and that's not what this country was originally founded for. So It really does go back to freedom, but responsibility. And
well, through spirit, can't everyone be reached? In other words, if there's a group of people that are all working together to send to different companies or different nations or people, it's almost like in a form of prayer, all working together, that they will do the true and the right thing for humanity. Isn't that an avenue through spirit that actually works?
I would think it's definitely a way that can work. The problem is, let's go back to the spirit versus religion. When we know
religion is
spiritual
different,
things that come through us, and once we can recognize that we're all spiritual beings, that this planet's a nice place to live in between incarnations, but if we destroy it, we've really limited our ability to have this planet participate in the whole universal process of evolution. So let me see, Arthur was talking
truth. Sending energy of truth, though, for purpose and value towards someone or a nation or something through the spiritual realm would be an avenue without religion, just for the value and the purpose of humanity, the truth in it, so that things can be turned around and done right and used in the spiritual realm. Isn't that at all possible where people could begin to do that so things could be healed?
It definitely is possible, and people are doing that now on their own individual basis when they pray for the universe, pray for the earth, pray for things to come, to get right. But we also need to look at here's one of my things. If we have all these religions, each of which are saying, well, we're the right religion, we have to kill you if you don't believe us, I think we should start having something like a Dancing with the Stars, but among religions, where we actually bring the leaders of the different religions together and have them all explain how they are the only one religion and that they therefore have the right to kill the others. And then hear from the other ones when they go, and then have the world as a whole say, wait a second, if everybody's up there saying that they've got the only truth and therefore they're the only correct religion and they have the ability to therefore kill anybody from other religion, we suddenly see it blasted out there in our faces and have a chance to vote on that, we might be able to say, come on, guys, can't you find some way to keep God in the picture but not say that God is only for you and realize that God is also for them? And in some way to actually, because as long as we have this uncontrolled, look at the whole Middle East quagmire. Everybody knows that this is totally dysfunctional, and yet it continues to go on. There has to be this broader vision or wiser vision of how we get people to talk to each other in a public forum, and then let the wisdom of the people decide who gets to if maybe everybody will decide that there's one religion only and that's it, but it has to be a 90% vote or more. Otherwise, it'll be the people that kill off the ones that and only leave the 90% to vote. But I mean, the thing is, we've got to look at things as Einstein said, if you keep if the level of consciousness that created the problem does not rise above that, then there's no solution. We have to actually begin to see these bigger pictures so we can rise above those problems of consciousness that led us to this space. And so, if
I really like what you just said. I mean, you just made a very important statement that I hope everybody is paying attention to. And I think also with this whole subject, what I love about Arthur's theory is the way it starts, that light has purpose. I mean, there's something, it sounds like a simple statement, but it really isn't. I mean, this is a very deep statement, very similar to what you said, but again, at the point of origination, it's almost like if we don't acknowledge that, then it's almost like it gives us permission to be bad kids.
Yeah,
and just
that's
go
right.
off, do whatever we want, and just say, well, everything's random, who cares, whatever. But the truth of the matter is, again, what Arthur said is the absolute truth. Light has purpose. And if everybody started there would be such a wonderment and a respect for that source.
Exactly.
Then we would be very, it would really be a stretch.
It would give us value.
it
Yes,
would
exactly.
give us value and
it would be very difficult to be disrespectful from that point on, understanding that we can't possibly understand the depth and the wisdom of that original light.
Exactly. And yet we can strive to do that by getting the wisdom from all these different religions, like the Indian culture you were talking about, and this whole idea of the blue star and some of their knowledge that they've had. I mean, these are things that are happening. We need the religions of all the wisdom traditions to come together and to say, I don't care if you don't look like me, I don't care if you don't talk the same language, and I don't care if your religion disses me and ours disses you. Let's hear what you have that's valuable that can get us out of this problem, because we're all in this arc together right now. And if the arc goes down, we all go down, even though some people will think, oh, no, I'm going to be the last man standing. But your previous statement about a culture without purpose, it's like that beer commercial that used to say, go for the gusto. You only go around once in life, so go for the gusto. Grab everything you can.
Yes.
Don't worry about the consequences, And that's the problem. I once wrote an essay when I was chief of staff called The Religion of Harmless Lies. And I talked about the fact that there's so much harm, based on, if you look back in the history and the Crusades and Inquisitions and all that, of religions who supposedly are speaking up for doing things right and protecting the poor and the weak and so forth, and yet how these different religions are constantly fighting and killing people all through the ages. And so I thought, I wrote this, and I said, well, this was based on an idea that Kurt Vonnegut came out in a book called Cat's Cradle. And he talked about the idea of a religion of harmless lies. He said, first of all, unless there is one true religion, everybody agrees on that. As long as we have all these different religions claiming that they are the true religion, then they're all lies, basically. And therefore, and they're causing harm. So in his book, he said, if we could create a religion of harmless lies, maybe then we could all agree with that religion and we would quit harming each other. So one of the things I offered then was this whole idea of reincarnation. If we knew that even if you're the most powerful corporation executive, that when you die at the end of your life, you could come back and suddenly be born living in an area where you're born with birth defects and early cancers because of all the pollution that you set up when you were in that previous incarnation, maybe, just maybe, you might want to change your view of what kind of world you might want to leave to come back in. So even if it wasn't true that we incarnate, although Arthur's theory kind of points toward the idea that the monad, which he calls the unit of light, is equivalent to the soul as it evolves through these different stages from plants to animals and then to humans, and then as we come back and learn lessons on Earth, that the reason we come to Earth is to learn those lessons, because we can fall down, we can have these problems like we solved earlier with the echo problem here, and we have a chance to learn and then go back to that area in between lives before we come down again. But so if we had that idea just that, hey, why don't we assume that we all come back and we're going to have to live in this gutter that we're making out of the world, maybe we all go, I don't want to come back and live in this, where the Pacific Ocean is irradiated and there's no life there and you can't even live on the West Coast because you're getting too many breezes coming in of all this radiation. I want to live in a world that's clean and has animals and enjoy it.
And so, let me ask you, Mike, too. I mean, because you're on the West Coast, right?
Right.
And what are you experiencing there? I mean, there's been a lot of speculation, but I know there's also a lot of science behind the fact that radiation has spread significantly to your area of the country. And
this is an example. It's the example of the government covering things up because they don't want people to panic and get upset with things. So they'll distract us with Miley Cyrus or with the Super Bowl or with all these things that mean nothing in the big picture to keep us from asking the question. We know that we have enough Geiger counters and radiation data that the government could tell us how much radiation has actually hit the shores so far, how much has blown in overhead, how much is being incorporated in the crops. And yet we're not hearing anything of that, not one way or the other, not somebody saying, oh, it's all good. The best we hear is, oh, the ocean's so big it's just going to dilute it out. Well, I'm sorry, but when the plankton start eating it and then the fish do and then we eat it, every place up the food chain concentrates that radiation even more. And if we all were aware of how bad it is, we might start standing up and say, this is, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take this anymore. We've got to have a government that actually is working. For example, in Japan, they have banned the reporters there from telling any stories of what's really going on in Fukushima. And they are arresting, you can check this out, they are arresting reporters who have tried to release how bad things are and what's going to happen if that reactor 4 succumbs to another earthquake and those rods are up there start falling down, and it creates this huge release of radiation into the ocean, enough to cause an extinction event. Now, if they are so proud to realize, the problem, and then they're trying to suppress the people having knowledge of that, then there's no solution. The third thing is instead of fighting different wars right now and such, we should be having an international task force that volunteers to go there and not only help the Philippine people right now who are in the middle of that typhoon, but let's go up there and give our best robot technology and other technologies to clean up Fukushima and get those rods out of the danger of sending more radiation into the sea. I mean, that's almost logical. It just makes sense, but yet nobody's talking about that. Nobody's looking at the big picture. Instead, we're having the president apologize for Obamacare, and the media is just fixated on one or two small things, and just the big picture of what's going to affect life on this planet is just being ignored.
And that is terrifying. I mean, it's just terrifying, and it's appalling at the same time that this has gotten to this level, and so many people are in the dark about it. It's almost like people don't want to know sometimes, don't you think?
Well, and that's the problem, They say, for example, so what if a comet or a meteor, or say Andreasson even, is suddenly on a trajectory where it would hit the Earth, and there was no way to do anything about it? Well, would you want to know where you could at least spend your last days doing something, maybe getting religion, whatever it might be, or trying to maybe be one of the survivors and build your bomb shelter? Or would you rather just blissfully go ahead and do your normal thing, and then suddenly the world, look up and it collapses? Myself, I'd like to know. I'd like to know, and in one sense, in our whole history, maybe the reason we even had to make those atomic bombs and of the military equipment that we've made might be to actually protect the Earth from some sort of a meteor coming up. Theoretically, I know that there was a movie Armageddon and some of those others, Deep Impact, but it's very possible if we sent a military rocket to one of these meteors that might be coming in early enough that we could put enough force on there using the atomic rockets or whatever to actually nudge that meteor from a collision course from Earth. And actually,
so that could have been the original. That could have been the original purpose.
It could have been. It was the original purpose to get the ability to do that. Then you could stop the wars, but you'd have the ability to save the planet because you've got the technology, but you know how to better use it rather than trying to figure out, well, let's see. If we bomb Syria and we bomb Iran, of course, we'll knock their nuclear plants out, but then we'll also spread radiation all over the east, or the Middle East, which will then blow into India, and that'll blow into Russia, and then they're going to be kind of pissed off that they're, sorry, can I say it on there? That they're killing people off by the scores, and so they may decide, well, we've got a few nuclear bombs left. Why don't we blow up whoever sent the first ones off? I mean, it's just an insane. And this is actually one of the things Arthur Seary kind of points out, or he doesn't say it directly, but when you actually get into the fine-tuning, is that the masculine force has been in charge of most of our evolution or the way we write our science books or the way things have evolved throughout history, H-I-S, his story. And we need the rise of the feminine, her story. It is time for that. And we don't need women as in, not putting down Hillary or anybody but we have right now women politicians that are trying to show that they've got more testosterone than the males. We need truly women
nurturing,
who are willing to take their power and their nurturing and to speak up for the people and the planet and to say, look, can we kill? I mean, look at this whole drone thing. We've now got a bunch of video gamers sitting in the CIA playing with these little knobs, flying these drones over here and killing people without any. They go home and have dinner. They take a dinner break. They go to the movies. They come back and kill some more people. Unlike regular warfare, where at least people had to be seeing the whites of their eyes and having skin in the game, these people can kill as many people as they want to, and they're now talking about having 700 or 70,000 drones over America. Oh, they'll be just keeping track of things, but as soon as you've got drones up there, you can outfit them with weapons.
Yeah, you can arm them.
This whole thing is just incredibly out of control.
Now, the thing is, Mike, again, it is out of control, and it has been for some time. And I know we're all seeing more and more people are waking up to the fact that the systems we have in place are working against us. But we need a lot more people to wake up. I mean, I'm always amazed at the lack of understanding or the lack of initiative. And I think it has to be on both levels. It just can't be action, although I'm all in favor of right action. It also has to be this internal piece, starting with Arthur's point of origination here, that the light has purpose. That one statement has really affected me tonight. And, again, the meaning goes on and on and on into the infinite. And if you can't start there, you're going down the wrong road. And this is what I think brought us to where we are today. It just has given us too much permission to then act in a rebellious way, which, again, we all pay the price for.
Right.
But we are at the turning point. This is the...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all the different things that talked about Armageddon and in the past, they had all these times they thought the end of the world was coming, and it never did, although when you have things like the Great Plagues and Black Plague and stuff like that, you might as well have had the end of the world for a large amount of the population. But we are actually coming to that point now where we have, as you had already listed, several scenarios that could wipe out life on the Earth. The cockroaches might survive, and maybe they'll evolve to the next conscious entities, but at least humans, as far as we've gone and as great as our civilizations have been, we're on that cusp where we could continue and move forward and bring this planet into an area of harmony that works for all, like the Thrive movie talks about, or we can continue the way we're going with nobody looking at the big picture. That idea of 7 generations of considering things before you make decisions, or these long-term decisions, is definitely something we need. Somebody looking ahead and saying that, and it may well be that these upcoming crises, whether it's the collapse of the financial system or another nuclear power accident or warfare. I mean, something might trigger us to have a speed up of that national awakening that we need. But it would be nice if we could wake up ahead of time and not have to undo as much of the damage that's going to occur from that.
And what about our ability?
We are.
What about our ability?
We have the ability. The big question is, do we have the can we get enough people to a level of consciousness that we all can agree that, yes, things should not stand the way they are? We've got all the solutions out there, but nobody has been able to, you'll have a splinter group here and a protest group here and a 1% demonstration and so forth. Those are all good, and they're part of the solution, but nobody's bringing it together, and particularly with the mainstream media blacking out all this discussion. I mean, your show right here has probably covered more things that really could help humanity than what you're going to see on a week of CNN. You're going to get the same things over again. You're going to get the Democrat versus Republican, and instead of having, and each side, no matter how wrong one may be to the other, gets equal time. But as far as having a neutral person there who could speak for humanity and speak for the big picture, I mean, it's one thing to say you're against Obamacare or you're for Obamacare. It's another to say, look, we have people that can't get health care and that need to have health care and whose healths are declining. We've got to find a way that we can cover for them while still having other people have their own choices and whatever. And but the thing is, whether we have Obamacare or not, if we're all contaminated with radiation sickness from the Pacific Ocean being contaminated, what's that going to help with? We're just
exactly. That won't make any difference at all.
Crematory care or something,
Well,
so,
one of the things that, Mike, that I've learned from Becky that is a very powerful statement is that all things will be shown in the light. And there's so much about what has gone on with the government, with this Obamacare and everything else has been very deceptive. Yet, again, aligning with the original source, aligning with the purpose of light, I think is the first place that everybody needs to start. With Arthur's theory, it's more than a theory. It's a starting point. And when you embrace that and you make that very powerful statement, I am aligned with the purpose of light, I think everything else starts to fall into place from there, including right action. But I do believe that that's where you need to start. You have to start there with the light and with that purpose.
With you at all. I agree, and it's right action and right timing is also needed. In other words, you have to be able to have both the right action at the right time to make these changes. And right now we don't have either. we don't.
And if I can just segue into another subject, because I know you're very committed also to assisting people who have had paranormal experiences, and especially UFO abductees, of which Becky has her own wonderful experience throughout her entire lifetime, many experiences to share about that. But one thing Becky and I have watched through the years is, again, this whole cover-up around the whole phenomenon of UFOs and then the harassment of the abductees and all of that. And it seems like you've been involved with this for a while now. I was wondering if you could shed some light on this topic to us tonight and to our audience.
Sure. First of all, I am a member of what's called OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. And this has been a group that would be both there to help try to steer people in the right direction if they've had a Kundalini rising type of an episode where they think they're going crazy because they're manifesting all of these unusual phenomena, also the abductee and the contactee phenomena and so forth. So rather than have these people suddenly go, well, here, take Paxil or whatever, to actually listen to what they've gone through and see if you can figure out. I mean, sure, there's going to be some crazies in there somewhere, but the majority of people that are having these experiences all over the place is too much to just, say it's all crazy.
Right.
Anyway, this last weekend I heard a talk by Stephen Bassett. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Stephen Bassett is a former lobbyist who actually has been working on what's called the Disclosure Project, and it kind of takes what Stephen Greer used to do even to the next level. In fact, in May, he had what he called the Truth Embargo hearings in Washington, D.C., where he rented the press club, and they had 6 former congresspeople hear testimony of about 47 witnesses of various types, military, corporate, government, plane traffic controllers, UFO investigators like Linda Moulton Howe, contactees, abductees, a whole range of people, but as many of them that could be considered non-fringe, mainstream people who had these anomalous experiences, including testimony from some of the military about UFOs over different military sites, and suddenly the nuclear missiles are shut down and go offline for periods of time, and the fact that they could have, if they can shut them down, they could have also fired them. So the UFOs have not manifested in a negative sense of causing a nuclear accident or something, but the main thing is that these stories have been out there, and the government would say things like, well, we had the Project Blue Book and we found no evidence of any threat to the United States of whatever this phenomenon is, so we shut the program down. And yet the sightings continue. Every night there's the UFO report from on coast to coast from time to time, where they'll say, okay, we've had 6 UFO findings or sightings tonight in these areas of the country.
It seems that they're increasing.
Oh yeah, and definitely they should be. I mean, if it's like the Star Trek non-interference directive, where other civilizations can come here and save us, but if we ask for their assistance and are willing to work with them, because they're not going to be able to clean up this mess just by themselves, but if we actually work with them, and actually this would be, well, let me jump back. So Stephen Bassett had this hearing, and it turned out that the 6 ex-Congress people that he had on the to hear the evidence, there were 3 women, 3 men, and none of them were UFO proponents. They all said they were open to hearing the evidence, but none of them had ever been like, oh, I believe in UFOs, I'm going to go out there and talk about it. At the end of the first day, just from the hearing they heard on that day, they were already starting to go, my God, this definitely needs an open hearing in Congress. This can't just be covered up anymore. And by the end of the 3 days of the hearing, they all were ready to say, okay, it is time to go to the government and talk to our colleagues and say, look, the last investigation that Congress did of UFO phenomena was in 1968. It lasted for a half a day, and at the same time it coincided with Project Blue Book suddenly saying, oh, we're shutting down because we found nothing. And so then they say, oh, well, if the Air Force said they found nothing and well, we'll just shut these hearings down, we don't need to go any further, and they've never looked at it again in any official capacity. But what Stephen Bassett was able to talk about in his talk is that before, the White House had never made any official statements on UFOs. But a couple of years ago, when Obama put the websites up to let citizens petition the government, and you could sign these petitions, and you would go to the government to see, if they could solve whatever the petition was about. He, I think, had the second petition up saying we need to reopen hearings on UFOs. Let us know what's the hidden information, and let's deal with this. Find out if there is a threat to the United States or the world from these UFOs, and if not, let us know what the truth is. And for the first time, even though nothing got done from an official point, the White House did respond, and they said 3 things, which are all indefensible in the sense. They drew a line. They said, A, there is no credible evidence that UFOs exist in any sense of an extraterrestrial craft or civilization. 2, they said there's no cover-up of information that the government has that would reveal anything beyond what we just said, that there's no credible evidence. And I can't remember quite the third, but and there's no need, I think, to ever even bring this back up again. So actually, Steve Bassett took that defeat of his petition as a thing to try to wake the reporters up. And he tried, when he had these hearings in May, to get the reporters to come in and say, look, this is possibly the most important cover-up in history, and the revelation that we are not alone in this universe, on this one planet, would be the biggest game changer in history. And therefore, we should, if you guys would do your duty and report on this, these hearings of all these witnesses who have highly credible jobs, they've been in your military, they've been in your intelligence, and they're all telling you things which, because the mainstream media will not discuss or bring it up, therefore the public at large just gets the usual dismissal, somebody saw a UFO again, they're probably drinking too much moonshine. But anyway, so the hearing was done. Unfortunately, something just like when Stephen Greer gave his hearings in 2001, 4 months later we had 9/11. And suddenly any discussion of what he had come up with his one day of hearings of opening up UFO files was gone. We had the national security state. Right. During this previous hearing, I believe it was right after it got started or a day or two before, we had the Boston Marathon bombings. And, of course, you know how that took over the media. And so whereas they would have had some more coverage of the event, it got blanketed to the public because of all that Boston Marathon bombing. So
again,
what he's doing is putting together a video compilation of all these testimony, and in January he's going to deliver a copy of the DVD and the proceedings to every congressional office, all 500 House Representatives, 100 in the Senate, and to the White House. And he's then going to have individual visits to these people and say, look, and this was kind of interesting as far as disclosure goes, because when he started giving his talk, he said, I'm going to try to convince you that disclosure could happen by next April. He said, if we look at Congress right now and its ratings are in the toilet, I mean, they're so unpopular, it's incredible, you have a possibility here of something that's not partisan. UFOs are not a Republican or Democrat issue. It's an issue of cover-up, of embargo of the truth, and particularly if there are UFO technologies, that could solve our energy crisis, because how could they get shipped from there to here if they haven't come up with better ways than coal or nuclear power to run things?
Exactly.
So he actually says, therefore, they're going to try to argue that if you will just get behind and sign a petition that you would be agreeable to opening up a public congressional hearing to look at the evidence, which your colleagues have already said, that the ones that are retired, who were in this disclosure embargo meeting, and look at it, you could come out a hero. You could probably win your next election by being fearless and getting out there and doing this, and it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's an individual courage thing. He also is planning to try to meet with Obama, if not him, at least some of his colleagues, because he says the argument would be, do you want to be not only responsible right now when your ratings are in the toilet for how Obamacare has been handled, but what if Putin or the Premier of China or some other major country's head of state comes out and publicly says, we're going to come clean. UFOs exist. We've had our own information that we've kept secret, but we're going to release it, and it's time for the other governments to also come clean, particularly the United States and such. Do you want to be the one that has to go, okay, you've been dragged and screaming, and finally have to admit that it's been going on, or do you want to be out in front and say, maybe this would be the way to save my legacy, to actually be the one who ended the truth embargo? Because it's not like the information's not getting out there. We have, you can go to a lecture of a contactee or an abductee, or, they're all out there. There's movies and there's other things. But as long as the mainstream media or somebody in government does not give the official, yes, this is true. I mean, we've got the Catholic Church even saying that they believe that there are other civilizations out there and kind of deciding how they're going to handle it when contact occurs.
That's fascinating in and of itself, that they're coming out with these kinds of things, and I do believe they have some huge telescope somewhere where they're watching the skies. So, yeah, there's just so much to it. I think the thing that I really want to bring out here is I commend you for your work with abductees and people who are experiencing Kundalini activation and other anomalies, and need to speak to people who understand these things. And as you mentioned, don't put them on psychiatric drugs. And that's something that you are actively participating in with this group you're involved with. And The website is on our homepage, supernaturalgirls.com, but could you also give that website out again?
It's called OPUS, O-P-U-S, Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, and they just revised their website, and they have a new web address, which I don't have access to right this minute, but if you do
I
Google
do,
search
and I
Opus,
will announce it. And I did go to the site, and I know, Becky, you did too. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful site.
It is.
Right,
and
it's being renovated and updated and such, and so they did change their name. I think it's some. Well, I can't. I could. I'll try to look it up in a second and see if I can get it off the internet, because the president had sent me an email with the new name of it. But anyway. Just continue the conversation, though.
But yeah, I mean, I think that it's remarkable that you are offering this to people. I think it's a great service, because so many people who go through these kinds of things have nowhere to turn, and then if they are abductees, then they face tremendous ridicule and harassment by God knows who. Whether who is harassing these people, whether it's our government or a shadow government or who in the world it is, but they get it from all sides. And
exactly.
It's wonderful to know that you are part of an organization that tries to support them through it.
Okay, I have that website for you. It's called www.opusnetwork. That's OPUSNETWORK.org, O-R-G, the new website name. www.opusnetwork, all one word for Opus Network.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I believe I had a different one on our website, but it'll still get you there. So.
Right. I think the old ones point to that new address, but that is the now new address for the new site. And I'm sure they'll be glad to have the traffic. And they're looking for volunteers that can help spread the work. And there's groups. There are definite discussion groups where contactees or abductees can talk among themselves on the web and so forth, as well as at the conference I was at last week. They had a meeting of contactees and abductees that shared their stories. And in fact, Stephen Bassett even talked about it. One of the talks he was giving when he was trying to get financing for his disclosure hearing, he went to some group in a town. It was like there may be 100 people in the audience. It was just regular people. Well, maybe not regular. They were in California. So, but anyway, at some point he decided.
That's
a
stretch.
He said something about, is there anybody out here that has ever had one of these abductee experiences and would be willing to raise their hand, or has no one here ever had that type of experience? I think his first one was, have you ever seen an unidentified object in the sky that you couldn't identify as a plane? And of course, got a lot of hands from that, but have you ever seen something you could say was a UFO or an actual craft? Well, not many people could have said that. Maybe there might have been one or two, but eventually. Apparently there were at first one or two people raised their hand on the abduction thing and then started telling a bit of their story with tears about how, I feel like I have never been able to tell this to anyone, but I feel safe enough in this group to mention this. And suddenly other hands went up, and by the end of the hands going up, there were 13 people out of the 100 who'd all had their own experience and had never talked to their neighbors, might have barely mentioned it to any of their family, but suddenly they looked around and realized they weren't alone. And so there's definitely a need for not just automatically assuming that anybody who's had an anomalous experience is crazy and needs to be on medication. And yet the culture, one of the ways the UFO cover-up has stayed is because it's always, you can almost count on it. When there's a large enough UFO sighting for it to make the news, then someone else will then make a comment about little green men or E.T. phoning home or something like that to make, and then a ha-ha, chuckle, and then move to the next story. And that fear of ridicule is what has kept people silent so long, and it's an effective way of mind control to keep people from pushing the issue. And so we felt like people needed someplace to go where people would listen to them and not automatically start calling for the white coats and the straitjackets.
That's true. They absolutely do. And before long, I just wanted to let you know, with the Catholic Church, in their telescopes, and they're watching the sky, and they're admitting that there are aliens, and the government stepping forward and coming forth and admitting it, and even our own government letting more things out, even though we have to go ask for it, things are being let out. It's because we are on a countdown.
Exactly.
They are not going to wait very much longer for governments, religions, groups of people who think they can control the world. They're not going to wait much longer. And then all these people that have had these experiences can turn around and say, see, I told you so.
Exactly. In a way, I think that December the 21st of 2012, even though nothing big happened that day, there was no sudden arrival of all the UFO ships or something that would make it a really mega event in the sense of like the movie and so forth. But I think that what that date was another term for apocalypse, I think, is drawing across the veil, drawing aside the veil, like when Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, they drew the veil and saw the wizard behind the machine. You know, please ignore the person behind the curtain. But it was the drawing of the curtain, and everything after 2012 has been this
opening,
disclosure of transparency of information. Snowden and Manning were good examples of that. Manning releasing the way that these video game controllers are laughing when they wipe out a man's car with his kids inside, and they blow down some paramedics going to help get the kids out of the car. He released that video, and the government had to admit it was true, that yes, indeed, this was in. What was worse was the sound bites of the people laughing, I got another one, just like it was a game. And yet these were people and kids being killed on our dollar. So we're responsible for what they're doing, and yet we're not even told this. And then with Snowden stuff, I mean, people have been talking about for years how they're reading our email and monitoring our phone calls and doing all these things. But nobody, you're just a conspiracy theorist, it can't be happening. And now we find out that with each week we're getting more revelations that are coming forth that show, well, not only do they now admit they monitor all of our email by at least the addresses, who we sent them to, it's from, and the subject line, but now the information's coming out, if they can get that, they've got the rest of it, and they put it in these big computers that look for keyword searches and all that. And now they're going to put monitors on all of our cars, monitor wherever we go, and have GPS things, and then we got these drones to look forward where they'll monitor everyone. I mean, this is just insane, and somebody's not monitoring the government. But now the transparency is occurring, and I think the UFO revelation, there's a book out called The Day After Disclosure, which really gets into what would society be like when that happens. And one of the things was they used to go with the H.G. Wells War of the Worlds.
They used to scare you, yes.
You're right. With the Orson Welles, when he had that broadcast, people did actually panic when they thought there was something coming down. And I mean, not a huge amount, but there were a few people that got injured and so forth. But they used that as the thing, the public can't handle the truth. But we've had so many movies about aliens, both good, E.T. and bad, with most of the others, Invasion or Independence Day, where they blow up the White House. But we've had so much stuff to really kind of get condition us to the idea that there's something out there, so that once we get the disclosure of what they know and it comes out in a public fashion, those of us who've already been ahead of the curve and knowing that this stuff's out here because the evidence has been there for years, if you would just listen to it, are going to be a step up on those who are suddenly going to be kind of shocked to find out that while they were watching Monday Night Football, all this has been going on, and they never even,
knew it, right?
Took it in. But it will change everything, and hopefully it'll be that what they call a discontinuous event that will cause us to look at everything anew. Because if the government has known about this since at least 1947 at the minimum from Roswell, when they released it and said, they're here, and then the next day, no, it's just a weather balloon. Please close your eyes and go back to sleep and ignore, what you just heard. It will change everything. And so I'm hoping that Steve Bassett is right, but I think, as you say, or pointed out, more and more other people are coming, and who knows, maybe Snowden's got in one of those final releases will be, and by the way, here is the monitoring of the spaceships above Earth, and these are the contacts where they've been talking with the military, and some of them here are signing pacts with Russia, and here are the ones signing with China, and so forth. Who knows what will happen, but we are definitely post-2012 are in this area of disclosure and openness. And again, to get back to Arthur's theory, a theory that has places in it, it's like your bookshelf, where I need some books on this religion, so I'm going to leave a spot here to put them in. His theory does allow for the possibility of reincarnation of the soul and the learning of the monad of the soul throughout different lifetimes, and also the idea that our evolution, as I say, we are in the same stage as the clam is in the animal kingdom in our evolution of what we might ultimately be, which might be the total enlightened being that actually can become the realized God of light and can refer back to the source. And so having a theory that allows for that and means it's not violating physics, it's not violating science, it is a new way to incorporate the best of science, but also the best of spiritualism. Not necessarily the worst of religions, but maybe the best of religions. Each religion has good and bad, but if we could take the best of the wisdom parts out in the other traditions like the Indian cultures and so forth, I mean, it's an exciting time ahead. We all have to realize that we could blow it, but on the other hand, we also have to realize, and again, this is where the hope is, that the feminine manifestation of their power will start to come through. And with the nurturing of the earth and the realization that you can't just be killing people willy-nilly and you got to clean up after your waste. You can't just say, oh, we can just pour it down the river here because we're not downstream and let them deal with it down there. I mean, those things are just so self-evident. As a kid, I remember seeing these pictures of pollutants going into streams and thinking, well, what's with that? You know, I mean, come on, that's not fair to anybody downstream, and it's polluting our water. And yet it's still going on. How can that be?
Yeah, and there isn't even an animal that does that that's going to pollute its own nest. You know, it's like it's craziness. Crazy.
Right.
Well, listen, Mike, we have a question.
Sure.
Somebody has called in from the UK, and he has a question about life after death. May I bring him on the line?
Sure.
Okay.
Hello?
Derek, hi. Welcome to the show. You have a question for Mike?
Yeah, hello, Mike.
Hi. How you doing, Derek?
Yeah, how you doing, mate? All right? Yeah, you're doing good. Yeah, okay. Well, my question is, have you ever heard of the Billy Meyer story?
Oh, yeah. I, in fact, very familiar with that.
Good, good. You know about his life after death sequence, and about how everyone came into being, about how he calls it the creation.
I don't know the details of that. I do know he had communicate. He's dead now, right? Or is he
No, he's still going. No, he's still going.
All right. Well, I know he had semyazi and various other communications from the Pleiadians and so forth. And I think that all of these things have to be, and this is one of the things that Arthur Young did. For example, he went and studied things like theosophy and UFO, different UFO contactee information, looking for information that couldn't be just wishful thinking, but would actually have something that he could, look and see if his theory could account for it. So I can't vouch for any of the details of what Billy Meyer's material.
Yeah, no one can. Yeah, no one can.
Themes. Right.
But
I think the themes are probably very valid to look into and to consider. But if we come from a spot that says, well, UFOs can't exist because they can't travel faster than light and get here, when you think about how little we know about light, and we only learned about lasers in the last 50 years, and look what we're doing with them now. We have these ability to make machines that will generate solid objects using lasers and plastics and computer technology. What do we know about light in 1,000 years? It may well be that since light has no time between the time it's emitted and the time it is absorbed and part of the body, that very well.
It's all very good. It's all very good, but you're not answering my question.
Sure.
What my question is the spiritual side, of the UFOs, not the technology, the spiritual side. And when it comes to the spirituality of UFOs, do you think that the whole universe bonded by one core. I mean, I've got a relative of mine who's almost dead. He's not quite dead, but he's almost dead. But he's on his deathbed, and he's sitting there, and he's talking about seeing his mum, who's been dead for over 80 years,
right?
And and seeing his sister, who's been dead for about 20 years.
Right.
And
I think very possibly he is, because I think that the soul. If you think E equals mc squared, energy equals mass times speed of light squared. And if we're all light beings, then we're also energy, and energy can be neither created nor destroyed, but transformed. So the energy of the soul that was incarnated on Earth, that energy in some form is existing in between lives and can manifest itself looking like his mother when she was old or when she was young, but he'll probably see her as he recognized her the most. But the idea that this can occur is clearly something that Arthur's theory allows for. Material science says, no way, this is all just an hallucination of an old person who's dying and he's just having he's going out of his head. And yet we have that Eben Alexander, the neurosurgeon, who was supposedly dead or brain dead for 6 days, and when he came back, not only did he have a recollection of all these things that had happened when he was out of his body, basically, but he found out that he had a sister who had died that he never knew about. And he met her on this outer journey he was in, and then came back and finally talked to his family and said, did I have a sister that died? Well, we didn't want to upset you, so we never told you about her. And he got the name and the picture, and suddenly it turned out it was the same person that he had met in the afterlife. So
would you agree with me that there is, when you die, there is something to go to?
I would say yes, but we'll all find out at some point in time for sure. But
have you got any idea? Have you got any idea with this energy? Because I know there's two people. I mean, I'm now 37 years old. I know there's me and there's me. There's two me's. There's my body, which is me, and there's my conscience, which is me. And sometimes my conscience looks after me, talking to number two. Sometimes my conscience will look after my body. So, is there something, if I die, what I'm asking you is, when I die, am I going to be all right? Is there something that's going to look after me? Is there a thing which made all of us in that big bang? Is there something that made some sort of consciousness which looks after all of us, everyone in the whole entire world, which makes it okay? Do you believe that there is, I'm not going to say the word, but do you believe there is something out there that makes you think?
I can just say this. My sister had a communication from my father after he died. He came and talked to her while she was sitting on a swing and was crying, and basically she saw his essence come and sit down and talk to her and tell her it's going to be all right. It was my time to go and so forth. So she's convinced that there's an afterlife just from her own personal experience.
So you call it an essence. Yeah, you call it an essence. Okay.
I think it's a process that we're all in, and this process doesn't end with a short lifespan of anywhere from you die at birth to 110, 115 years, and especially when religion says, oh, you're going to, if you didn't toe this line, you go to an everlasting hell. That kind of seems like an excess amount of punishment if your life.
Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe, me personally, I believe that the spiritual mind is 10 times, 100 times, 200 times, 1,000,000 times more powerful than any technologically advanced computer. Like we're there, we've done it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Sure. Yeah. And think what a computer's going to be like 1,000 years from now. I mean, there'll be some merging of humans and technology, I'm sure. But you're right. I mean, life, as I see it, and as Arthur's theory kind of points out, on those 4 levels, we're all one at the spiritual level. We're all one. But once we come down into that second level, we're into the soul level. This is where our individual soul, or what Arthur refers to in his writings as the monad, comes to learn their individual lessons. So we're all one at the ultimate source of the oneness, and if we realize that, we would treat people a lot better. But we're all on our individual spiritual journey, coming down to earth to learn lessons, going back to review those lessons before we come back for the next incarnation. And if we're really good, we can actually direct our incarnations to try to finish the things that we may have started on a previous life and hadn't gotten fixed, but we know needs to still be fixed, kind of like when Arthur found the invention that needed to be invented. So you're right. It doesn't end with death. The exact of what we're going to find out is probably unique to every person's afterlife experience, but
exactly.
Do I believe that there's something beyond death? Absolutely.
Derek, thank you so much for your call and your questions. They're excellent. We're coming to the end of the show. So, again, many thanks for your call tonight.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay.
Yeah, thank Derek.
So, Mike, this has
been... We are getting toward the end here.
Yeah, this has been fascinating, and I want to thank you again for putting up with our echo problem, and I'm glad we did get that resolved so we didn't end up with a big headache at the end of the night. So.
Right, and no problem. I'm glad we did get it resolved because I was getting a little feedback problem. I was wanting to take off my headset and just talk without having any feedback. But be glad sometime to come back on your show, and maybe we'll start and get the full 2 hours without the glitch.
That would be
anyway,
great.
I'm glad that we were here tonight and hope that this was enlightening for you and that you got something out of it. I would recommend, again, people go to Arthur Young's website, www.arthuryoung.com, and you can see all kind of free stuff, essays. There's things you can order, but you can see a whole lot of videos of Arthur talking, and there's a whole YouTube channel on his videos. The interesting thing is I'm not promoting anything. I don't have anything to gain from you going to that website, except that you gain knowledge of what the truth is and how to make the world a better place. I will say that this year we are putting together an Arthur Young course being sponsored by the University of Philosophical Research down in Los Angeles, which was originally founded by Manly Hall, and we're going to have 10 DVD course that explains Arthur's theory and then applications of the theory, and it will be available to the public after a year or so once we've gotten it there for the university itself. So, and we feel like that we're on clearly the time is now that this information needs to get out, and so I'm glad you've been a part of helping me to get this information out to the public.
Well, it's our pleasure, and this was more than interesting. This was an absolutely transformative show, Mike, thanks to you and all the information that you brought forward about Arthur's theory. And also he has a wonderful book called Nested Time, which is also available on the website, arthuryoung.com. He was a fascinating man with many, many things to offer. This theory was actually just one of them. So please go to arthuryoung.com.
Right. I'll just mention one other thing. I mentioned he had the books Reflexive Universe and Geometry of Meaning. I would recommend the Reflexive Universe as the one that gives the basic of his theory. When he published it, he had to pull out the part that he put into the Geometry of Meaning because it dealt with his own investigation as he did all these other things. But in this case, it had to do with his investigation with astrology and what was behind the angular meanings of all the angles and these relationships of astrology. So that book, they told him, you can't have that in your book, Reflexive Universe, because they'll just crucify you. They'll say you're just mad. So he pulled it out as a separate book. But for those who are interested in the principles behind astrology, you might really enjoy the book, The Geometry of Meaning, which is his companion volume. But
wonderful.
That's his astrological biology. Before he died, he worked with he had 176 journals that he kept ever since he was in college, I think, especially through the years that he was inventing the helicopter. And at the end of his life, he died in 1995. He was 90 years old. He had worked with some people who were also organizing this course where he went through his journal diaries to find incidents in his life, and then he would run the transits and the astrological things that were happening, and he found out that almost every time something significant was set to happen in his chart, something did. And it wasn't, it was more like this was your opportunity. This is an accident, but you can go this way, you can go that way. But so that's his. And Nest of Time is his astrological biography, showing his chart at the time that these significant things happened. So, yes, that's an excellent book.
Yes, that sounds incredible. Well, again, everybody go to arthuryoung.com. Take a look at the website. There's a lot of free stuff, as Mike has mentioned, and there's also books for purchase. So, again, Mike, can't thank you enough for this incredible experience speaking with you and getting all this great knowledge. Thank you so much.
Right. And I'm glad to hear that you knew Arthur's granddaughter, I guess, right?
Yes.
You said you
yes. Arthur's granddaughter lives right up the street from me.
And what's her name?
Marin.
Oh, okay. I don't know her personally, but I'm glad that there was that connection there that allows you to know that we're talking about a real person.
That's exactly. It was my friendship with her to learn about her grandfather, and certainly she was very blessed to have someone like that, a relative so close to her in her life. Such an inspiration, I can only imagine.
Right. Anyway, so I was glad to hear that when we talked before the show, and I'm glad you had that personal connection there. So
yes, well, that's what led me to contact Joan and then to contact you. And again, thank you so much. And Mike, we're going to let you go on with the rest of your day, your evening there in California now. And Becky, you have a message for someone, a listener, so we're going to move to that. And Mike, thanks again.
Okay, I'll listen in for the message if you don't mind. But yes,
yeah, you can. Just stay on.
Both of you. Okay,
you can stay on.
Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes.
So, Becky, what an exciting show.
Oh, my gosh. I loved it. There was so much there and shows. I mean, it was amazing. The light.
Yes.
I mean, Patricia, our own experiences. I mean, the light.
Yes, our own recent experiences, which we're going to be sharing soon with our audience. We've got a lot that's coming up that we're going to be doing and sharing with our audience. So, yes, this has been a remarkable show. I'm so glad that Mike was able to come on tonight, and how exciting. And again, thank God he's a patient man with that horrible echo.
Yes, and I'm glad that was all cleared up. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Okay,
so you have
I
a message for somebody.
Yes, I do. The message tonight is for Stephen. And here is the message that I received for you, Stephen. Yes, take the journey. You will discover something anew which will change your path, opening and uplifting you tremendously. Noriasti tiki kuma a roso toshia ne a ne torakina tushiambaka a le a te noranda si nariati ku a shono tukuma leriosha I e nonati sheon doku. Stephen, we are with you. And there's your message, Stephen. I hope you realize it and take that journey and let us know.
Yes, please email us and let us know how you received the message and the action that you may have taken after hearing it.
Wonderful.
That's terrific, Becky. How beautiful.
I love these messages. I get the chills and the goosebumps every time I receive them.
That's wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
Well, now I just want to again, say something to our audience about next week, because we are bringing back Michael Bastine, who is going to talk to us about Tuscarora Medicine Man, none other than Mad Bear Anderson. I am so excited about this show.
Yes.
I mean, every guest we have is so remarkable, and next week, certainly to hear right from the apprentice of Mad Bear, it's going to be another transformative show. So everybody stay tuned. Next week we will be back with another exciting show and hopefully no echo.
Yes. So that's true.
So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Patricia.
Good night, Becky. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.